Now the party didn't start till I walked in, and I probably won't leave until the thing ends. But in the meantime and in between time, if you work your thing, then I work mine. We came here together so we could have fun. Me and you, baby, going one-on-one. Now this is the last chance for us to get off. So either get loose or you ought to get lost. Cause I'm just about ready to do my thing. Cause I'm a stone cold New York rap machine. I'ma give you what I got, and baby, that's plenty. And never has one man rocked so many. I'ma make you wet and make you sweat, just to see how funky you can get. Now when I'm on the mic, I do serve well, and I go by the name of the rapper y'all love. Now sit back, relax, put on your headgear. Get ready for a trip through the atmosphere. Gonna take you for a ride through the twilight zone. I don't need a spaceship, I use my microphone. So hold on tight with all your mic, cause I'll be rocking like this for the rest of the night. It's Jalil, your master rapper. And when I'm on the mic, it's a sheer disaster. Cause MCs crumble when we rumble. Some think I'm soft just because I'm humble. So all you MCs, I hope you're real good listeners. Cause in this battle, I'm taking no prisoners. I'm slaying MCs right on the spot. Cause I'm the master of the rap, the doctor of the rap, the jack of all trades, the master of one. And the thing I master is called having fun. We got 3 minutes left to rock this funk, to separate the good stuff from the junk. So get in the groove and feel the sound. And once you're inside, spread yourself around, from the bottom to the top, top to the bottom. Come on, Master D, and get funky while we got it.
Me and my partner from the start, we used to get together at the dark. Sometimes we rap, sometimes we sing, in the summer or the winter, cause it ain't no thing. And ever since I first came round, side by side we would throw down. We came here to this here place to serve you all right to your face, because this jam here is our showstopper. We didn't want to use it, but I guess we got it with the man of the hour. Make the ladies scream and holler. Too hot to drop, too sweet to be sour. I'm gonna set the record straight, and I hope that it is not too late. If you want the best, I won't settle for less. Put your money on me, I'm your best bet. Come on, 1 for the trouble, 2 for the bass, 3 for the ladies, 4 for the play. 5 minutes of funk, this ain't no jump. So pull your bottom off the tree stump. Ladies real pretty, city to city, but now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. From the bottom to the top, top to the bottom. I'm gonna rock 'em, why I still got 'em. Our rap and shower has style and power, and this is our disco hour. I don't know if all of you have heard, so it's up to me to spread the word about the man that we feel has got to be real. Our crown prince on the wheels of steel. He goes by the name of Grandmaster D. So if it's alright with you, it's alright with me. We're gonna rock you people's minds with ease, with some help from the maestro, if you please.
We Japanese still. You getting cooked in front of your family? Like a Japanese meal. It's Yasuda Hibachi and none of you niggas can stop me. But can't help but watch me. So look, bro. You know what I'm saying? We're going strong back-to-back days doing videos, even though the workload heavy, the business is calling, the money is calling, and I'm going to get what's mine, you know what I'm saying? But I couldn't let the day pass, couldn't go to sleep without dealing with the Green Saharan legacy of EM2. Shout out to D'Anastasio, the geneticist that is responsible for putting together the thesis, doing all of the grub work that we guys are reading, doing all of the work, doing all of the testing and doing sequencing and all that in her lab and her colleagues. I appreciate her for everything she does because she has opened up so many eyes to the Green Sahara, to the patrilineages of the Green Sahara, the migration, the mobility of Africans. So I appreciate her and her team for the work and commitment and dedication that she put towards it, because without it, you know, we will have a dearth in the community. She has done so much for this community. So we're going to be dealing with the paper that she wrote as a thesis, and I think this is what gave her her master's. Actually studying the Green Sahara is what granted her her master's. So we're going to be dealing with that tonight. Hopefully this is not too long of a show, and we can, do what we gotta do, establish what we gotta establish here tonight, and just put some extra sauce on the migratory story of the E1B1A peoples, my peoples, man, my U175 people, my U174 people, EM191s. Everybody came from E1A, the V38 family, even the M2 sister branch that branched off to create a Z995. The Gambians, Senegalese, Mauritanians, the people that went to Morocco. I just took a trip to Morocco. Shout out to all my brothers, even the ones that went and developed European clays. And we also got to understand this, man. There's white Americans that get tested, and they find out that they're Z5995, and that's Senegalese, Gambian, Mauritania, Morocco, and then it goes into Spain and goes into France. So that's more North African, right? That's more North African specific, and then Europe, it has European subclades. It's the importance of getting big Y tests, and a lot of people that get that are white American, they are confused. Well, why do I have this? I don't have any history or any known history of Africans. You could have been a Senegalese descendant, Gambian descendant, or you could just been a North African E1B1A descendant that went into Europe, and then you probably became a part of the Spanish culture or the French culture or one of the Iberian cultures and came to the Americas that way. I mean, there's various ways you can slice this and determine what part of the ancestral pool you belong to, right? Archaeology, before there was genetics, before we were able to examine people's Y chromosome patrilineages and their DNA, we're able to look at our archaeology and see, in anthropology, and see that a lot of these regions on the Ivory Coast, Windward Coast, places like Togo, Benin, Ghana, a lot of these regions seem to be very either sparsely populated or not populated at all until the desiccation of the Sahara. So the idea of people moving in as trans-Saharan people into Western Central Africa is not new with the advent of genetics. It's just been enlightened and bolstered through the advent of genetics. Because now we can see, okay, E1B1A, one of these clays that most people think are static and stuck. The people that don't know any better, we can see that it has North African variants. And these North African and Sub-Saharan African variants converged during the time of the Green Saharan period. That's how we know they were all once together. Majority of them go back to the M180 clade. And as we showed in yesterday's show, that M180 clade was in Algeria or somewhere in the Green Sahara. The sickle cell paper points this out as well, that sickle cell most likely developed in the Green Sahara because you need a wet, lush environment, to attract the mosquitoes and stuff of that nature. And that's usually like Razib Khan says, shows you what your ancestors were doing. They were agrarian and they were dealing with wet environments. So with that being stated, we're going to get into this paper today. We got the savant from the Levant in the building. What's going on, Avery?
What's good? What's good? Back-to-back episode. That's what I'm talking about. That's pretty cool. I didn't know we were doing this.
Yeah,
I'm all for it. I was actually thinking about we should download the video we did on Yap and upload it here. That Green Sahara video. But I guess if we're gonna do it a different version tonight, I guess we don't really have to do that then. Since
I forgot about that video. Yeah. Well, we read from the book, and it talked about the mobility of how the trans-Saharan peoples migrated from east to west by utilizing the mega Lake Chad and the interconnected rivers that you can get from the west coast of Africa, the east coast of Africa through the rivers. So they were all connected. There was so many of them. So yeah.
We need I guess we can just leave it there since we're doing this tonight. It's going to be I'm assuming we're using the same sources, right? Or are we doing something else? Are we?
No, I'm using Anastasios. Hopefully, I'm saying her name correctly. Her thesis, because she put a lot. What we got in the Peopling of the Green Sahara paper is in that thesis, but she goes into more detail. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's another woman who writes a lot about the Green Sahara as well that I ran into some of her articles and stuff. But yeah, a lot of people, and this is a European woman by the way. But yeah, a lot of people have been digging into this. This other lady I'm talking about specifically deals with she uses terminology like sub-Saharan Africans or Black Africans being in the Green Sahara. And this is like I said, a European woman, scholar.
Right.
She doesn't go into the genetic aspect, but she does go into like the cultural and artifact type of aspect.
Yeah, Atanasios, I believe, is Italian.
Okay. Yeah, this other lady I'm talking about, I think, might be British, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So every time we go into those papers, that's her work. You know, the people in the Green Sahara, the recent paper she did on the Fulani, that's her. The ghost population of the Green Sahara, that's
really?
all. Yeah, she's spearheading those papers.
Man, that's what's up. That's pretty good.
Yeah, she got her master's by doing those papers.
Shoot, I might be right there behind her doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's North Africa is greatly understudied.
It is.
And there's a lot that needs to be covered. I was sitting back the other day. I was like, damn, a lot of people got E1. Like E1B1A is like more known about than a lot of the clades.
Yeah, and it's always good looking at the Arabs when they talk about it too, because they provide a new light when it comes to E1B1A and in its migration patterns.
Right. And like I said, like archaeology, like you brought up, it's obvious when you look at places like Tanin, Bogo, and Ghana. When you look at those, when you examine those places, Nigeria, those places were not really inhabited until after the Sahara dries up. So people already came to the conclusion that, hey, this, like, after the Sahara, reached this apex and then began to dry up, people started to migrate southwards. That's a very old hypothesis. That's not something new that came with DNA.
Right.
Just studying that pottery and stuff of that nature, crops and stuff of that nature.
And if it was populated, prior to, it would have been populated by hunter-gatherer populations that were not, agriculturalists or pastoralists. So it would have been like pure foragers, kind of like the Sri Lanka remains, where we found haplogroup A and B and mitochondrial L0 and L1. Those would have been the people originally inhabiting West Africa for hundreds, if not thousands of years, you know, if there was people there.
Right.
Because folks forget E1B1A is a lot younger than haplogroup A and B. A and B been in that continent for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, and they were widely distributed. They were more widely distributed than they are today.
Yeah. I mean, they stretched from North Africa to South Africa. It's believed that Jebel El Heroud in Morocco could potentially have been A00, because there was debate whether he was an archaic human or if he was an anatomically modern human. And a lot of the newer sources are saying that, you know, he looks to be mostly anatomically modern human with possibly some archaic admixture, but he pretty much seems to be a human, ancient human in Morocco. And he's dated to 300,000 years ago. And haplogroup A00 can be dated to about 300,000 years ago. So that's a sub-Saharan African chromosome A, all the way in North Africa and Morocco. And then, of course, in archaeology, there's evidence of like human populations and all the way south in South Africa. So yeah, those A and B markers have been around Africa longer, way longer than E1B1A, which is only like about 40,000 years old. But A and B go back. Well, A specifically goes back, like I said, to 300,000 years ago, and B is about 80,000 or 88,000 years ago, something like that.
Right.
Anyway, let's say you got a source.
Yeah, just to exemplify what I'm talking about, this idea, because they knew about the Green Sahara longer. Right. This is not something, new. This is the Oxford Handbook of African Archaeology, the Stone of Middle Age in West Africa. Matter of fact, the oldest human remains that we have in West Africa is that sample, that fossil, the Iliru in Nigeria.
Yeah, and there's debate whether he was either one, anatomically modern human, two, a full-blown archaic African, or three, something more of a mixed person, like mixed between both archaic and modern human. But anyways,
right. The same thing is going on with Neanderthal in Europe, but they're starting to realize that, hey, the Y chromosomes, that the parts that we're able to sequence and make sense of, look more modern human. So what they're starting to come to the conclusion of is what we're saying is archaic, like what we're saying is Neanderthal might just be a human with Neanderthal features. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Homo sapiens sapien with Neanderthal features. So right here in chapter 41, we're at page 799. It says climate change thought to have been a significant factor in the SMA, the Stone of Middle Age. At the end of the Pleistocene, around 12,000 years ago, warm, humid conditions brought about a northward shift in the vegetation zones that currently characterize West Africa. Forests and savannas expanded, the deserts contracted, and animals and people spread out over what is now the Sahara. During the mid-Holocene, around 4,500 BP before present, so we're talking about somewhere around 2,400 BCE, the climate change abruptly caused the vegetation zones to contract and assume their current location. So this is when you start to see the desert to become what we know what it is today. People living in the Sahara by hunting, gathering, fishing, and herding responded by locating their settlements closer and closer to the disappearing water sources, increasing their reliance on domestic crops and eventually abandoning the Sahara altogether. It is around this time that substantial evidence appears for human settlement of southern parts of West Africa. In West Africa, there is very little evidence for people south of the Sahara prior to the mid-Holocene, and such evidence as does exist is primarily of small, scattered groups of mobile hunter-gatherers, and some of whom return frequently, possibly even seasonally, to the same places. The earliest late Stone Age sites date to around 12,000 before present and are dominated by chipstone assemblages, primarily in quartz and often with geometric microliths. They are generally distinguished from an early and even less well-known Middle Stone Age by the small size of their napping debris, although a microlithic aspect of LSA is also known. A number of these LSA sites are overlaid by SMA assemblages recognizable by the appearance of groundstone tools and pottery dating to 5,000 years or later. But so the point I want to bring out about this is the fact that, there's little evidence of humans, human activity in what we know as Western Africa, Western Central Africa, prior to the desiccation of the Sahara. Why? Because people were living in the Sahara, including E1B1A peoples. So this is not something novel. This has been known.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people like to almost say that West Africa was just heavily always populated by like thousands upon thousands of E1B1A markers for the last like 40,000 years or something like that. And it's like they were all scattered in Benin, Togo, and Ghana and Nigeria and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it doesn't really look like there was like a massive E1B1A population in West Africa for the past 40,000 years. There wasn't that many people living in West Africa.
Exactly. People got to understand it. I can bring one more resource on that before I get to the main meat and potatoes of this. Because again, we start seeing an increased population in Walata, and a lot of the material that they're using, the bladelets and stuff, seem to come from the north and not from the south. Because again, those people they did not have the or any evidence of the inventions that we see coming from people from the north until after the desiccation of the desert of the Sahara.
The Shumlaka paper mentions the same thing, that the tools and artifacts that those bodies were found among did seem to point to a northern origin.
Yeah, because I remember our boy Danoy, I think one of his troll accounts said something about that. I was like, bro, if you read the paper, it tells you that the artifacts there point to a northern origin. In that same paper that you're trying to downplay West Africans and Sub-Saharan Africans with.
Yep. It's even saying that the basal West African DNA may have came from a more northern point.
Yep. That's why it's important to read sources. You guys be trying to cherry pick and then get caught out there. Well, I mean, how many times have we brought that up, right? How many times have we brought up what we call people just, playing games? I don't know why y'all want to put West Africans in the prison. Like our ancestors were never, incarcerated. This is not a prison sentence. People move. And I did find that source where Africans are very mobile. It says in the African context, Africans are highly mobile. And this just makes sense. All humanity starts in Africa, right? So that would mean these Africans have been moving since then. Because if they weren't, if the people of Africa weren't, then you would not have human dispersal events throughout the entire earth. The earth would not be filled with Homo sapiens sapiens, now would they? That's the oxymoronic part of that statement, But I'm trying to find this source right here about the hard to chit. Let me just put this in the hard to chit real quick, and then we get to the main meat potatoes of today's topic. Because she did a great job at exemplifying the role that E1B1A had in the different clades and where did they go to, and how, like we brought out in yesterday's show, how many of those clades have specific subclades and regions that show that, hey, these people were once in North Africa, these people were once in Egypt, these people were once in, Algeria, Mali, Mauritania, Sudan, Libya. they were more northern, and she explains why you don't see as many as you do in sub-Saharan Africa. Of course, the Bantu expansion happens in sub-Saharan Africa. Even some sub-Saharan African clades, after they go south, they go back north. So she does a great job of just examining the demography of E1B1A and also RV88. Anybody saying that sub-Saharan Africans are not mobile, just point them towards RV88. These people come from the Balkans. These people ultimately come from Europe and make their way down. Most people believe they came from Egypt, northeast, and then into making their way into Niger and Chad. And they utilize the mega lake there and the interconnected rivers there to travel as well. That is what's thought, that was the mode. And I mean, all of this makes sense. All of this makes sense. Somebody posted in the group about the early E1B1A samples in Kenya, and one of them was M58. And as if you guys, paid attention to yesterday's video, I know it's 4 hours long. We talked about M58 and how it's thought to be have its origin in the Near East. That's another branch of E1B1A. We're talking about 3000 BCE, 2000 BCE, somewhere around there. Right? So, let me see. Well, if I don't find it, I'll just drop it, because I did have it earlier. I got a lot on my plate, y'all, but I'm gonna still provide this content to y'all. So, let's see. And then we also talk about crop cultivation, because we know cultivation is a human activity. That's why it's so big, the discovery of bananas in Cameroon, the phytoliths of bananas in Cameroon. That's huge, because you need people that come from those regions, or at least traded with those regions, to migrate over there and show how to care and cultivate those crops. Because if not, you're not going to yield any damn seeds or yield any crops, but you don't know what the hell you're doing. Someone that's from the place where it's indigenous can better show you, okay, this is how you cultivate the bananas, how you treat it, this is where it needs to grow, this is how it needs to grow, or any other crop. Crop cultivation is a powerful tool to show human migration, because you need humans that have the know-how to cultivate it in the first place, that come from the place where it's indigenous. When we start seeing coconuts and stuff like that, I found it. Coconuts, bananas, these are South Asian, resources making its way there. And you can look at a lot of clays. EM75 is East African, and it finds its way to West Africa. It has subclay specific to West Africa as well. So that's showing you migration. The Burum people have East African ancestry. So, Malagasy people, they have South Asian DNA, South Asian origins as well. So you can easily say, okay, there's been trade between India and South Asia for however long, and they get it, and then people on the continent get it, and then they make their way to West and Central Africa, and boom, that's how you get bananas in Cameroon. A lot of ways you can go about this. So here's the source here. Same book, Oxford Handbook of African Archaeology. We're on page 745. And it talks about food producing communities and what we were just discussing with crop cultivation. It says right here, one of the first instances of food producing communities known to research also lies on the Sahara-Sahel border, specifically in southern Mauritania along the escarpment of the Har-Tachit, Walata, and Nema. This area has yielded many sites dated to the second and early middle first millennium BC of a population that has for decades been associated with the rise of an agro-pastoral economy. As there are no known precursors for these sites, the economy may have come about through migration rather than through further development of a local population. All right. So we can just read up here. It says more recent studies indicate that the pearl millet was cultivated from the beginning of the sequence circa 1800 BC. This may indicate that domestication itself took place elsewhere, perhaps further north, and that the settled community with its agro-pastoral economy came into the Tachit Wallata name a region as a complete package. So again, it all lines up. The DNA is lining up. The crop cultivation is lining up. The animal domesticates are lining up. The bladelet assemblages, the tools they use, the techniques they use is lining up with having a more northern origin. And the DNA is showing this. Like again, E180 being in the Green Sahara, the sickle cells being said to originate in the Green Sahara. These people are once more northern than they are today, their ancestors. Anyway, from there, let's go to the meat and potatoes. So, trans-Saharan connections, high-resolution analysis of human Y chromosome diversity by Eugenia de Atanasio. We're going to go down to the relevant portion of this paper. And I believe it's the peopling of Africa. We'll start there. Then we're going to jump to the Central Sahara portions, the Fulbe people. Because she just goes in, man. She provides a lot of nuggets in this paper. So here's the summary. Throughout the past millennia, the Sahara underwent strong climatic fluctuations. During the humid phases, the desert became fertile and was called the Green Sahara. During these periods, it was populated by fauna and hominins. The last humid phase occurred between 12 and 5,000 years ago, and the human occupation of the Sahara in that period is testified by a bulk of archaeological and paleoanthropological evidence. About 5,000 years ago, an abrupt climatic change put an end to the last African humid period, leading to the desertification of the Sahara. After the onset of these arid conditions, the Sahara became a geographic barrier against human movement, a fact testified by strong genetic differentiation between present-day populations from northern and sub-Saharan Africa. In spite of the large amount of paleoclimatic and archaeological data, little is known regarding the dynamics of the peopling and the depopulation of the Sahara linked to the climatic changes. In this context, today, the rare Y chromosome haplogroups with a trans-Saharan distribution could represent the genetic relic of ancient widespread populations and could provide information about past expansions and migrations across the Green Sahara. In order to investigate the role of the Green Sahara and the people in Africa, we deep sequence 3.3 MB of 104 Y chromosomes belonging to 4 trans-Saharan haplogroups and identified 5,966 mutations, of which 51% were novel. So she was bringing new mutations to the table with this work. That's why I said what she did is very integral to our understanding of how the Sahara was populated, how sub-Saharan populations today are populated. It says, we obtained age estimates for mutations defined haplogroups using Y chromosome sequences from 4 ancient specimens as calibration points. We also analyzed geographic distribution of 108 informative mutations by genotyping 7,690 subjects to 141 populations, including 17 populations from literature, mainly from the African continent. We found that the correlation age of all trans-Saharan haplogroups date back to the last African human period, 12 to 5,000 years ago, while most Northern African or Sub-Saharan African specific subhaplogroups expanded locally in the subsequent arid phase, less than 5,000 years ago. Our findings, are consistent with the hypothesis that the Green Sahara represented a corridor for human movements and exclude recent historical events, such as the Arab slave trade, as a major determinant of the gene pool of present-day Northern African population. So again, many people will treat slavery as the only mode of transportation for sub-Saharan Africans. So if they see a sub-Saharan African clade or a sub-Saharan African related clade or peoples in North Africa or Europe or in Arabia or in Near East somewhere, they automatically assume that that's a result or effect of the slave trade. But no, that's not the case. These movements are a lot more ancient. Again, as we brought up to ad nauseum on the channel, we have West African head lice in ancient Israel during the Copper Age. And what that shows is human movement, because parasites need human hosts to move. So if you got West African specific head lice there in Israel during the Copper Age, that means that West African people were there. And we even have the haplogroups with L2A1 and L3 also being found in the Near East, which are West African or Sub-Saharan African clades. Anyway, So you can't just run to slavery, try to explain everything away, like most white supremacists do, or most ultra Afrocentrics. So we're going to go down to the peopling, the portion of the paper about the peopling of Africa. Let's see if I can get down to it. I know it's down here somewhere.
Shoot, why don't you want to accept your ancestry? Just be a proud
I'm a
Black Sub-Saharan West Negroid African.
I'm a proud Sub-Saharan, West Sub-Saharan African. I'm a proud that, but that doesn't eliminate and erase the history of the people of Sub-Saharan Africa, which most people try to do when they're white supremacists or ultra Afrocentric, where they want to just treat Sub-Saharan Africa, treat Benin, Benin, Togo, and Gambia, and all these places as like incarceration camps, instead of just geography where people migrated to and moved to and utilized the landscape. Now, to them, it's a prison sentence. West Africa is a prison sentence, and we were stuck there, separated from humanity for eons, and that's not the case. Peopling of Africa. According to archaeological, paleoanthropological, and genetic data, Homo sapiens originated in Africa less than 3,000 years ago. Later, our species left the African continent and colonized the rest of the world, a scenario called out of Africa. The distribution of Y chromosome haplogroups in Africa. Within the African continent, different lineages have different geographic distributions. Basal clades A00 and A0 have been observed at very low frequencies only in small populations in Central Africa, in contrast with the most ancient human fossils remains that were found in Eastern Africa. A1 has been found in low frequencies in the area range of Morocco, the Senegal, and Niger. And what this shows right here, real quick, this is our commentary, is that, again, Sub-Saharan Africans have a wide distribution. It's not just below the Sahara, because, again, we're already starting off. A1 was found in Morocco, the Senegal, and Senegal is pretty northwest, right? And Niger. A2, defined by M6 marker, is present in the Khoisan population from Southern Africa. On the contrary, assisted clade A3 is present in different areas of the African continent. And also, real quick side note on Morocco, this is probably why like Igbo populations have they have autosomes that date back to, I'm trying to remember the paper, I think 10,000 years ago, that match with like Khoisan people.
Yeah, the paper says that the Igbo have mixed with others of a Khoisan-like population in the Western Sahara, and it gives a reference to Mauritania when it comes to like rock art and the evidence of hunter-gatherers being in the West Sahara. So yeah,
right.
And that the mixture would have taken place in the Green Sahara.
Yep. So we're seeing the remnants of that population that the ancestors of the Igbos most likely interacted with, mixed with. A2, defined by the M6 marker, is present in the Khoisan population of Southern Africa. On contrary, assisted clade A3 is present in different areas of the African continent, with its internal lineages showing a clear geographic differentiation. The rare A3M28 is only found in Eastern Africa, while assisted clade is more frequent and is further subdivided into two main subhaplogroups, A3M51 and A3M13. They are found in Southern Africa, Central Eastern Africa, respectively. The A3 distribution suggests that Eastern Africa is possible or place of origin, with a recent expansion of the central and southern part of the continent. Sub-Saharan haplogroup B, defined by M60 marker, is subdivided into two main branches, B1M236, B2M1A2. B1M236 has been observed at low frequencies in western central part of the continent. B2M1A2 has a wider distribution, being present in eastern, central, and southern Africa, with some of its subhaplogroups reaching frequencies up to 70% in some populations. The most common haplogroup in Africa is haplogroup E, which is also frequent in Europe and the Middle East. The distribution of this clade and its internal lineages within Africa is not homogeneous. Its E-M33 branch is found in Western Africa, while EP2 subhaplogroup is present in the entire continent. So if you guys don't know, EP2 is the ancestral clade, our ancestral group of males that produce the people known to have E1B1A and E1B1B. We represent the lion's share of haplogroup E in Africa. It says this clade is further subdivided into two lineages, EV38 and E-M215, EV38 being E1B1A, E-M215, E1B1B. Each of them include a rare Eastern African lineage, EM329, which is E1B1A2, and EV16, respectively. And a more common branch, EM2 and EM35, respectively, which is further subdivided into different lineages. EM2 and EM35 are found in different geographic areas. The first is present mainly in sub-Saharan Africa, that's EM2, while the second shows a wider geographic distribution, being present at significant frequencies outside of Africa in the Mediterranean area, just like we were talking about. We did a show on Dante Fortson's haplogroup. His haplogroup will fall into this category of E1B1B clade that has a distribution outside of the continent of Africa, most famously being known to be a part of the Natufians, right? And then those Natufians will have descendants and famously being known to be a part of PPNB and PPNA peoples, the pre-pottery Neolithic peoples of the Levant. And these people were spread out to Anatolia, spread out to southern Europe, spread out in the region, become part of what we know as the Jews or Israelites, become part of a lot of ancient cultures, be part of the, and then you have EV13 as well, going and being a part of Anatolia and also the Balkans as well. Haplogroup EM75 is subdivided into an Eastern African clade, EM41, and a more widespread lineage, EM54. That's why I was talking about this group. This clade lets you know that east to west migration did happen in sub-Saharan Africa, because you do see it more widespread. You do see it in the coastal West Africa. You do see it in East Africa. And you do see it in North Africa too, in some places outside of the continent as well. Within the macro haplogroup K, the G and J lineages are quite frequent in the northern part of the continent. You also have J lineages, real quick sidebar on this, that are in Cameroon, that are in Chad. They're there. You do, which are downstreams of P58, by the way. You do have them. You do have them in the coast as well. So could have came in through Arabs, could also came in through an ancient wave of Eurasians that we know took place around 3,000 years ago. We brought that up to ad nauseum on the channel. We cover a lot of ground here, y'all. It says here, in their presence in this area has been put down to the Neolithic migration from the Middle East. The remaining lineages are very rare in Africa, with the exception of haplogroup T and a subhaplogroup within RV88. The former reaches a frequency of 18% among the fulvia from Cameroon. So you do have a West African contingent of haplogroup T carriers in Cameroon, and 11% frequency among the Oromo from Kenya. RV88 is quite frequent in West Central Africa, where its presence has been explained as a migration back to Africa from Asia. The role of the Sahara in the peopling of Africa. The Sahara Desert is the widest hot desert on Earth and covers about 1/3 of the African continent. From the Atlantic coast to the Red Sea, over the past millennia, Sahara underwent strong climatic fluctuations, alternating arid and humid phases. During the humid periods, referred as Green Sahara or African humid periods, the landscape was characterized by the presence of savanna forests and extensive system of rivers and lakes. A large amount of paleoecological and paleoanthropological evidence indicates that the fertile environment probably enabled the occupation of the Saharan area by fauna and hominids since the Miocene. That's 23 to 5 million years ago. The most recent Green Sahara period occurred in the Holocene in a time frame from about 12,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago. This phase has been denominated Holocene climatic optimum and is the most well-documented past climatic change. The human settlement across the Sahara in this period is testified by archaeological evidence such as rock engravings, lithic and bone tools, and pottery. After the African humid period, the climatic conditions became rapidly hyper-arid, and the Green Sahara was replaced by the desert, which acted as a strong geographic barrier against human movements between northern and sub-Saharan Africa. A consequence of this is that there is strong differentiation in the Y haplogroup composition between the northern and sub-Saharan regions of the African continent. In the northern area, the predominant Y lineages are J and EM81, with the latter reaching a frequency as high as 80% in some populations. The massive presence of these lineages in northern Africa has been explained as a consequence of a Neolithic migration from the Middle East. On the contrary, sub-Saharan Africa is characterized by a completely different genetic landscape, with lineages within EM2 and haplogroup B comprising the most of Y chromosomes. In most regions of sub-Saharan Africa, the observed haplogroup distribution has been linked to the Bantu expansion. According to this hypothesis, about 3,000 years ago, the demic diffusion of Bantu agriculturists brought EM191, EU209 to EM2 subhaplogroups and BM150 from Central Africa to the east and to the south, while EM191 also spread westward. However, in spite of their Y haplogroup differentiation, northern and sub-Saharan Africa share at least 4 lineages at different frequencies, namely A3M13, EM2, EM78, and RV88. A3M13 is typical of Eastern Africa, where it's found with the frequency as high as 40% and is prevalent in the Nilo-Saharan populations, in particular among Nilotic pastoralists. A3M113 chromosomes have also been found in Central and Northern Africa, with frequencies ranging from 1 to 7%. Outside Africa, this haplogroup has been found at very low frequencies, both in the Middle East and Sardinia, where its presence has been explained as a consequence of historical events such as the Roman or Vandalic dominations. As described above, EM2 is a clade which has been often associated with the Bantu expansion in the sub-Saharan area. However, EM2 chromosomes have been also found at low frequencies, 2 to 10% in Northern Africa, where their presence has been hypothesized to be a consequence of recent movements. Again, she's going to address these recent movements like slavery, trans-Saharan slave trade, Roman intervention, stuff of that nature. EM78 is a widespread lineage with significant frequencies in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East. Within the African continent, EM78 subclades show different frequencies in different regions. EV22 is mainly an Eastern African subhaplogroup with frequencies of more than 80% in the Sahel population in Eritrea, but has also been reported in Egypt and Morocco. EV12 is relatively frequent in Northern and Eastern Africa, but it has also been reported outside of Africa at low frequencies. The vast majority of Eastern African EV12 chromosomes belong to the internal clade EV32, which has also been observed in Northern and Central Africa at low frequencies. The sister clade EV12 is defined by EV264 marker and is further subdivided into 2 subclades, EV65 and EV259. The former is very frequent in Northern Africa, while the latter includes few Central African chromosomes. So you do have EV29. EV259 is an E1B1A clade that we do find in Western Central Africa. So somebody could be like, oh, well, how can you have E1B1B and be a descendant of slave? That could happen. You could be one of these EV29 carriers. It says here the overall EM7A geographic distribution in Africa has been explained as a result of migrations along the Nile Valley between Eastern and Northeastern Africa. RV88 can be observed at high frequencies in the Central Sahel, Northern Cameroon, Northern Nigeria, Chad, and Niger, and it has also been reported at low frequencies in Northwestern Africa. Outside the African continent, 2 specific rare RV88 sublineages named RM18 and RV35 have been observed. RM18 has been reported at low frequencies in Lebanon, Corsica, and Sardinia, while RV35 is restricted to Sardinia. Within the African continent, RV88 is very frequent in the Central African population that speak the Chadic language, a branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family. 2 different hypotheses have been proposed to explain the arrival of Chadic language in Central Africa from Northeastern Africa, which is the probable place of origin of Proto-Afro-Asiatic language. According to the Inter-Saharan hypothesis, the Chadic language followed the east to west course along the Sahel belt. On the contrary, according to the Trans-Saharan hypothesis, the Proto-Chadic language arose in Northern Africa and arrived in Central Africa, crossing the Sahara. Because of its ethnogeographic distribution, RV88 has been linked to the Chadic spread, but to date, both hypotheses are considered equally likely, and another trans-Saharan migration route has also been proposed in the opposite direction compared to the previous one, from Central to Northern Africa. All right, so from there, we're going to go, let me go back to the index real quick. It's a very lengthy paper. So we're going to go and deal with the discussion. Well, first, let's go to the geographical distribution. Then we're going to go to the discussion. And I'm only going to do EM2 for time's sake. And we're going to deal with the Central Sahara. And we're going to deal with the Eastern Sahara as well. I'll knock all that out. And the general overview of the Sahara. So we'll read all that. Let me go to page 55 real quick. The molecular dissection of EM2. And as a figure here, figure 8 represents how the former EM2 ancestral chromosomes belong to different sister lineages. Considering the place of origin of the deep sequence samples from our lab collection, we observed that the majority of the Northern African sequence chromosomes, 7 out of 8, were clustered in 3 subclades, 72, 77, and 81. So that's 72's here. 77. Where's 77? It's being elusive right now. I see 76. And then 81 is here.
77 is right there. Right above 171.
I see it. 72, 77, 81 all have North African variants. And you guys can look at this paper yourself. It has the color legend here to let you know what each clade, or what distribution each clade has, what part of Africa, if they have a Near Eastern clade, which M58, if it's here, it's on the other one. M58 is Near Eastern, it has a Near Eastern distribution. It says the place of origin of each branch is represented by the triangle at the tip. So you guys can read this on your own and dissect that. It says when selecting the polymorphisms to be genotype, we paid particular attention to those variants shared with the 262 EM2 chromosomes from the 1,000 Genomes Project in order to increase the discrimination power of our analysis. Through this comparison, we identified some branches, namely branch 72 and its eternal clades, branch 79 and branch 81 and its sublineages, branches 95, 98, 99, which share no markers with the 1,000 Genomes Project chromosomes, while 79, 95, 98, 99 represented terminal clades downstream from branches sharing SNPs with 1,000 Genomes Project lineages. Branches 72 and 81 were 2 deep sister lineages within the EM2 main multiplication. Interestingly, both of them included deep sequence chromosomes from Northern Africa. So EM2, when it split, that's what that main multiplication is. It created a sister lineage, and these 2 sister lineages are from Northern Africa. That's where they most likely formed. Similarly, the other lineages not found in 1,000 Genomes Project were mainly represented by Northern African subjects. So again, why is this all important? Because a lot of you guys are probably like, oh, you're just making a lot of noise. Womp, 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 womp. Because again, it's showing you that there are specific E1B1A descendants that formed in North Africa. Well, in order to form in a place, you got to be in the place. So this is showing that, hey, at one point, the ancestors of all that we call E1B1A, these sub-Saharan Africans and North Africans, and wherever they may be throughout the world, and in Arabia, of course, us in the Americas, we were once all together in the Sahara, in the Green Sahara. It says here to obtain a detailed picture of the distribution of EM2 subhaplogroups in Africa in a wider sample set, we genotyped 15 potentially informative SNPs chosen, taking into account our resequencing data information from the 1,000 Genomes Project and the data from the literature. And here's the clades here. It says the results of genotyping analysis of EM2 subclades showed how the geographic spread of EM2 was mainly due to the EM4727 subhaplogroup, while the rare EV4257 was scattered across Western Africa and Central Sahel. Within EM4727, EU209, that's the clade I come from, 209, 290, and EU174 were the most frequent clades being present and average high frequencies in all the sub-Saharan region, from the Sahara to the southern part of the African continent. Interestingly, the sister clade of EU174, namely E8019527, was very rare and scattered. I want y'all to remember that clade because she's going to mention this one again. The other lineages with a high number of subjects were EZ15941 and EL516. The first one of the sister lineages within the E-M2 multiplication and showed a strong Western African component with also a large number of Phoebe subjects from Nigeria and northern Cameroon and Chad. Interestingly, it has also harbored a good proportion of North African samples, in particular from the western areas. EL516 was the sister clade of EM191 and mainly included Central Sahelian chromosomes. EV5001, corresponding to branch 72, remained restricted to northeastern Africa, while EA186 also included some nomadic Phoebe subjects. It is worth noting that the lineages mainly distributed in West Africa also harbored a relatively high proportion of subjects from American admixed populations with African ancestry. All right, then it moves on to, here's the distribution of the clade. And as you can see, EM58 has a Near Eastern distribution here. EM58 formed about 5,000 years ago, so at the later end of the Green Sahara. So, and you can see these blue strips here: Northwestern, Northeastern African, E5001, Northeastern African, EA186, widely distributed. So you have East African, Northeast African and Northwest African variants. And then you have migratory groups here that go between the Central Sahel and Western Africa. So, represent like the Fulani and stuff of that nature. Anytime you see the stripes, that mean they're migratory. All right, and then here's E8019527. You see Northwest African, you see Central Sahelian, you also see Central African, and you see Eastern African. So as you can say, just as the paper was pointing out, that group is pretty well dispersed throughout Africa. All right, so from there, let's go back to the index. We're going to go down. We're going to go to the Sahara portion. Right here, the Central Sahara. So we're going to go to page 71. The Green Sahara and the four Trans-Saharan clades. In the present thesis, we found considerable evidence concerning the effects of the Holocene climatic changes on the distribution of the four haplogroups here analyzed. In general, we found that the nodes that join lineages from northern and sub-Saharan Africa correlates during the last African human period. In order for this to happen, correlates means to join again, right? Or come together. For all of us to come, that's our origin point. Our origin story starts in the Green Sahara. For all of us, we all converge. These four groups all converge into this cluster during the Green Sahara between 12 to 5,000 years ago. On the contrary, most clades restricted to the either northern or sub-Saharan Africa correlates after 5,000 years ago. So that's showing you that after the desiccation, they start to develop their own distinct clades or downstream clades of these clades that formed in the Green Sahara. It said these findings suggest that the present distribution of trans-Saharan haplogroups can not only be put down to very recent events, as suggested in previous studies. On the contrary, it seems that the current distribution was heavily influenced by events that took place during the Green Sahara period. Despite the general concordance of results for the four trans-Saharan haplogroups, there were differences in their specific history and geographic distribution. In fact, the onset of the arid conditions at the end of the Green Sahara period was more abrupt in Eastern Africa compared to the Central Sahel, where the presence of an extensive hydrogeological network buffered the climatic change, which in fact was not complete before approximately 4,000 years ago. And that's very important because remember, we read earlier that we didn't see that much human activity in Western Central Africa until after like 2000 BCE. That would be 4,000 years ago. That's when those regions that were north and lush before dried up in the Central Sahel. It says here, therefore, departure from Eastern Sahara was more rapid than from the Central Sahara, a fact testified by different densities of archaeological evidence. The Central Sahara. The central part of the Saharan Sahelian belt is characterized by the presence of Lake Chad. During the Green Sahara period, the lake occupied approximately 400,000 kilometers squared, Lake Mega Chad, and it was linked to other northern mega lakes by rivers and wetlands. This water network, if y'all don't hear anything, hear this part right here. Jamal is boring, but this is part of learning. You got to read, man. You got to analyze this stuff. Y'all want highlights. I'm trying to get y'all the meat here, man. This water network formed a corridor across the Sahara connecting present-day Algeria, Libya, Niger, Chad, and the northern regions of Cameroon and Nigeria. So again, as we read before on the episode we did on the Yap channel, that they were using these waterways to travel. They traveled all over.
You want to pull up a map of Mega Lake Chad and the lakes, or keep reading?
Yeah, I can do that. Hold on, Mega Lake.
I was gonna do that, but you got it.
You got one? Get it.
Yeah.
If you got one, yeah, go ahead.
Green Sahara. Yeah. All right. Trying to get this one because it shows the interior of the lakes and stuff. This one right here. All right, about to share my screen here in a second. And 3, 2. Man, how come I find all these good maps tonight when the other night I was anyway? But here we go.
Good time for a water break.
Yep. It's taking me so long. I'm trying to find a specific one, but I got it right here. This one, because there's a lot of maps with Meg Lake Chad, but I want the one with the lake river. So here, I'm about to share my screen.
Hey man, that should be a movie about the Green Sahara, man.
In fact, I'm surprised we don't have any. Well, I guess a lot of people don't know about it.
I know. Popularize the Green Sahara.
That's a fact. The closest thing we got to a Green Sahara-esque movie is Doom. That's going to become a Green Sahara by the time Paul's done with his jihad. But anyways, y'all can see right here, this, I'm just going to zoom out really quick. This is an example of Green Sahara. Everything you see in brown is like mountains and stuff. And then the light green is savannas, and the dark green is like woodland and forest. So if you zoom in on Mega Lake Chad, you see a bunch of different rivers that are stretching out from it. And just like the reading said that Shub had, you see the rivers can stretch all the way further north, and they connect to these other lakes that would be in the modern day countries of places like Libya and Algeria. Zoom out a little bit. Y'all can see right there. And E1B1A populations were sprinkled all throughout this area. We saw the other night with the Globetrotter that these E1B1A populations were primarily in this particular area. They seem to have been like in northern Niger, southern Algeria, and Libya. So they were a bit right here. But E1B1A also would have spread when it went south, traveling along these rivers to Lake Chad. And also some would have traveled west to like Senegal and places like that. But they were taking rivers. They weren't just walking in the middle of a desert or whatever. I don't know what people got in their mind, but yeah, they were taking routes via rivers. And there's evidence of boats found in the in places like modern day Lake Chad. There's Neolithic boats that are found there, and also in certain parts of the desert today. And there's rock paintings that even illustrate people swimming and animals that you'll find, such as hippos and alligators. So there's definitely people using these water routes.
Yeah, and there's rock paintings of them using canoes.
Yep.
Yeah, they was using canoes, and they were able to get places very fast. By utilizing these interconnected rivers. So instead of walking and having cattle or burden to carry everything, you can do it through the water, which will be more efficient and more fast. And like we brought up earlier, when the Sahara was green, that book brought up about the crisscross rivers and how people utilize that and throughout what we call the Sahara today.
Here, I got another map I can show, and then we can get back to the reading. This map right here shows the same thing, but it removes the mountains and savannas and trees and stuff, so you can probably see a little bit better with this map. But these are the river systems coming from the lake, and yeah, it would have been extremely. No wonder it was a lush paradise, because with these lakes and rivers just all over the place, like it's going to be very green. Let me zoom in right here. Yeah. So folks here would have been going up north. People up north have been going south. Yep.
Yep. Just follow the rivers, bro. Just follow the rivers. Human migration was very easy to achieve during this period.
But E1B1A sub-Saharan Africans never left West Africa proper.
Right, exactly. That's idiocy, because as we know, those people, and not just them, other sub-Saharan African groups, were all over. They were in Algeria. They were in what's called Morocco. They were in Libya. They were in Egypt. They were in Sudan. They were in these regions. Mauritania, Mali. They populated those places. They were there.
Facts.
So,
I'd rather take the advice from actual geneticists in the field than folks on Facebook that don't got anything else better to do.
right. All right. So
the experts' advice. But go ahead.
Right. Animals. You remember Professor X? Humans don't be around hippos. Why would hippos be? That was just dumb.
Even though there's evidence of humans literally hunting hippos in the time of the Green Sahara. They went after those creatures.
Yeah.
Probably because they provided a lot of food, and you can, turn that skin into leather. So,
and they and also use the teeth and the bones for jewelry and all that other stuff.
Yeah. The reason for hunting them is no different than humans hunted mammoths. Mammoths are dangerous, massive creatures who can crush you to death, but humans still hunted them to extinction.
Right. And Gobero, Niger, the woman specimen, the female specimen they found, she had like hippo bones on her neck, like a necklace. So they would do stuff like that as well. I just want to show this real quick.
Makes sense.
So this is from When the Sahara Was Green, How Our Greatest Desert Came to Be. Page 44, and it says, in Northwest Sudan are the remnants of once more luxuriant population of Mediterranean trees that have moved progressively southward across the once green Sahara when great rivers flowed south from the Atlas Mountains into the south central Sahara, traversing much of the present desert, and also enabling humans to move along these drainage channels. So this is the way humans migrated. Animals migrated this way as well, following the water or going through the water. Look right here in southern and central Sahara, people equipped with barbed bone points hunted hippos, crocodiles, turtles, and Nile perch and many of the small lakes that were scattered across the vast region. Remember, whatever his name is, Chief X was saying, oh, why would they go around these vicious animals? They hunted them. And today you have hunter-gatherers around hippos, lions, big cats, and shit like that. So what's the issue? There is no issue. It's just dumb.
The issue is he didn't do enough reading. That's the issue. He only read that one article in that video, maybe two, and that's it. No books, no actual genetic papers, if I remember correctly. Just one or two articles, and boom, that proves that no one was in the Green Sahara. Everybody was on the outskirts.
Right.
Man, we deserve that cash. He said to prove it, I want my check, bro.
Yeah, we need some money, bro. We need some money. Let me get some more here. Hold on. Let me get one more. Oh, this part right here, even after the desiccation of the Sahara, when it became a desert, it still was being migrated. The Garamantes being the greatest example of this. But right here it says later migrations by Iron Age people saw a number of Saharan oases becoming occupied and reoccupied. So that's how they would do it. Yes, it got tougher because it's a hot, dry arid area for you to travel through, and the heat and everything will kill your animals. A bird will kill you if you're not hydrating yourself. So then they created oasis thanks to Middle Eastern technology known as fogaras and irrigation, right? Being introduced into these regions, they were able to still travel and traverse through the Sahara even after it dried. But watch this real quick. It says another remarkable scene from the Tassili shows a canoe identical in shape and form of the Tonkwak canoes used to this day by fishermen on Lake Tana in Ethiopia. These one-person canoes are made from papyrus reeds. We can conclude that watercraft were in use in the heart of Sahara at a time when papyrus reeds were growing in local swamps and wetlands that have been since vanished from this area. So, I mean, these people were using watercrafts during this time. They were traversing these places because, again, right here, it says lines of evidence and points to a number of occasions when the Sahara was crisscrossed by active rivers and studded with an abundance of freshwater lakes, some huge and others quite small. As we read earlier, humans were using these riverways to travel. Animals were using these riverways to travel, and they also had canoes. So anyway, let's get back to the other source. We almost done. We about an hour in. I don't want to go over 2 hours. I gotta get my ass up and go to work tomorrow. Anyway, so we left off here. This is why we went on that tangent. This water network formed a corridor across the Sahara connecting present-day Algeria, Libya, Niger, Chad, and the northern regions of Cameroon and Nigeria. So all these riverways made it very easy for the ancestors of E1B1A and A3 markers, RV88 and EM2 to traverse and travel back and forth throughout what we know as the Sahara today. In this part of Africa, we found lineages belonging to 3 of the 4 trans-Saharan clades, A3M113, EM2, and RV88. AM13 during the Green Sahara. Based on the phylogeny and geographic distribution, the first northward movement linked to A3M13 involved A3V5912 subclade, and it took place between 10,000 and 10,000.75 and 10.24 thousand years ago from its homeland, which was probably somewhere in the sub-Saharan regions between Central and Eastern Africa. This is coherent with the hypothesis of the occupation of Central Sahara by Sahelian hunter-gatherer groups, which moved northward following the spread of the savanna landscape. After the arrival of A3V5912, an undefined region in the Central Sahara, there was a hiatus of 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, followed by the formation of several lineages, including a large number of subjects. In this context, we found the footprints of 2 main events: a Green Saharan expansion northward, represented by the lineage of A3V3663, and more specifically by its internal clade A3V2336. A Sahelian movement from the Central Sahel to Eastern Africa, represented by A3V4735. So again, she's using the people today that exist today and showing it, utilizing that and showing how they were distributed and dispersed, showing you that sub-Saharan Africans, people that live below the Sahara, migrated. How do we know that? Because of their genetics. Their DNA are matching with people that live in the north. Their DNA are matching with people that live in the East. Well, wait a minute. Y'all come from the same pool of males. Y'all are once together. Y'all dispersed during the Green Saharan period. Some of y'all went north. Some of y'all went east. Some of y'all went back south. That's the beauty of DNA. And you can see these distributions here. A3V 5912 being in northwestern Africa. V1018 being in eastern Africa. V3663 Central and North Africa. Same thing with this clade here. And then this clade here, we see blotches in Central Sahara and some down in the Horn and below. It says here, after the arrival A3V912 in the Central Sahara, the internal clade A3V3663 differentiated between 10.24 thousand years ago and 7.62 thousand years ago. A3V3663 seems to have followed two different evolutionary routes, with the A3V2742 clade, which arrived as far north as Sardinia, while A3V2336 expanded in the Central Sahel region between 7.62 thousand and 7.45 thousand years ago and arrived as far north as Egypt. So again, Sardinia is an island in the Mediterranean Sea. Sub-Saharan Africans made their way there and had children and developed their own distinct branches of their own clades there. It says, considering the topology of this clade and its frequency distribution, the center of the expansion could be near Lake Chad, where the highest frequencies are found. We lack the information necessary to date the arrival in Egypt precisely, since we did not analyze all 20 SNPs of branch 24. However, among the 3 random chosen markers genotyped in the whole sample, only one polymorphism, B3964, was found to be shared between the Egyptian and Central samples, and this finding can be interpreted as a clue which indicates a northward movement that occurred in not recent times. So you can't say these sub-Saharan peoples got there via slavery, because the mutation on their Y chromosomes are that they share between sub-Saharan Africans and people in Egypt today, North Africans. It's too old of an event to put it as a transatlantic slave, well, not transatlantic, but trans-Saharan slave trade, Roman intervention, or any of that. It says it's worth noting that the early Green Sahara, more specifically between 10.75 and 8.43 thousand years ago, a branch of A3V1018 moved from the place of origin of A3M13 towards the Horn of Africa, where it underwent an independent evolution. In conclusion, the strong geographic differentiation of the A3M13 internal clade suggests that they have been separated for a long time, and our estimates indicate the end of the Green Sahara period as a possible cause of their separation. Moreover, the direction of the movement seemed to have followed the northward spread of the fertile environment from the Sahel towards the Central Sahara, according to the most common scenario reported in literature. Now let's go to EM2 during the Green Sahara. The signals found in the EM2 haplogroup are less pronounced, because this haplogroup was heavily influenced by the Bantu expansion, which mainly involved the EU209 and EU174 sublineages. Apart from these 2 subclades, we found at least 2 Saharan Sahelian clades, EZ15941 and EL516. And 1 lineage restricted to northeastern Africa, EV5001. As you can see, there's several clades here. EM4727, which is the main distributor, E1B1A there. 42457, Senegal and Gambia, and Central and going towards Eastern Africa. Northwestern Africa is E15941. A lot of Fulani will carry that one. And you see it in Northwestern Morocco. You see it in Central Africa, going towards Libya and Algeria as well. V18891 is pretty much all over. U174 has got a wide distribution as well. L516, Northwestern and Central. 801-19527, you see blotches going towards Algeria. You see blotches in Morocco. You see blotches along the coast of West Africa, and then you see it close to Chad.
Zoom in on EM2. Just, E1B1A1 in general. Just zoom in on that. Let's look at that. So basically, it stretches all the way. E1B1A markers are stretched all the way from northern Africa to southern Africa.
Yep.
from all the way from the east to the west.
Yep. And you even see blotches in the Levant.
Yep, even a little bit in Israel. So stretches as far as north to as far as south. So E1B1A isn't just in West Central Africa. It's pretty much all over the continent. It's not just like one area of the continent of Africa.
The differentiation of EZ15941 dates back to 10,000.53 to 7,034,000 years ago. The frequency map of this clade shows that this haplogroup is found around Lake Chad, along the Niger River, and northward as far as Morocco and Egypt. I just took a trip to Morocco. In order to shed light on the past events of this lineage, we compared our SNPs with those found in the Y chromosomes from the 1000 Genome Project, which mainly come from Western Africa. In this in silico analysis, we only considered the 1000 Genomes Project SNPs within our sequence 3.3 MB. From our NGS, EZ15941 was found to have 3 sublineages, namely 78, 79, and 80. Branch 79 comes from northeastern Africa and shares no SNPs with the 1000 Genomes Project samples, suggesting that its separation from the Western Central African populations occurred in ancient times. So again, you can't say that this is a product of slavery, Arab slave, none of that. You can't. This happened 5, 6, 7,000 years ago when they split. And where did they split? In the Green Sahara, which is now what we call the Sahara or the northern parts of Africa. It says the subject representing branch 78 is a Mandinka from Senegal and shares only one SNP with a short subclade from the Mandinka from Gambia, analyzed in the 1000 Genomes Project, suggesting that they arrived in the western regions long enough ago to differentiate within the same population. Finally, branch 80 comes from northwestern Africa and shares 1 out of 15 SNPs with a Gambian terminal branch from the 1000 Genomes Project. This suggests the separation of branch 80 and the Gambian lineage occurred in ancient times, possibly around 7,000 years ago, considering that each mutation occurred every approximately 408 years. All these findings suggest that the origin and first dispersal across the Sahara of EZ15941 was linked to the African humid period. However, it reaches the highest frequencies among the Fulbe and Western populations, and their possible impact on the spread of this lineage will be described in the later section. But things of note, Gambia, where's the Gambia at? It's right there. It's like right below Western Sahara and Morocco. It's right there. Like, this stuff should be common sense that you'll share Gambians will share haplogroups with people who are Western Sahara, Mauritania, and Morocco. They're neighboring countries. But the idea in your head of this invisible force field, the idea that there's an invisible force field that checks your DNA and makes sure no E1B1A carriers make it north is just silly. It's just silly, man. It says here, in other Sahelian-Saharan clade, the other Sahelian-Saharan clade, EL516, differentiated between 8.42 and 6.43 thousand years ago in a broad area ranging from the Central Sahel to the western coast. It was found in different frequencies in different populations with different linguistic affiliations, with no clear link with a single ethnic group. By comparing the SNPs of the 1000 Genomes Project with our variants, we only found matches for branch 96 and 97. Branch 96 comes from Western Africa and shares 2 SNPs with a 1000 Genomes Project sub-branch, including 3 Western African samples. Branch 97 harbors 2 samples, one from northern Cameroon and the other from Morocco. So we still taking trips to Morocco. And it corresponds to a 1000 Genomes Project short branch, including 3 American admixed subjects. The African ancestry found in American samples is mainly due to the Atlantic slave trade, which took place between the 15th and 19th centuries. Considering the Y chromosome variation, this recent event is hardly distinguishable from the present, and the admixed population are very similar to the source population of Western Africa. Interestingly, our subjects share no polymorphism with the admixed samples, even though they belong to the same subbranch. The lack of common variants suggests that our samples separated from the admixed subjects before the Atlantic slave trade and just after the time estimates of node 97, 4.49 thousand years ago. It is worth noting that not all branches not identified 1,000 genomes by the 1,000 Genomes Project, branch 95, 98, and 99 come from the Western regions, but rather they include subjects from the Northern Sahel and Northern Africa. All these findings suggest that EL516, similarly EZ15941, was present in the Green Saharan population, which settled in the broad area of the megalakes between Northern Africa and the Sahel, with the first dispersal linked to the humid period. So 2 things to break down for this. These people are not a product of slavery because they split long before slavery happened. This is like 5,000 years ago when these groups split from each other. They were once together, then these group of males separated, right? Like Abraham and his brother Lot, and then they started to populate and form their own branches of E1B1A as they grew, had more children, and become their clans separated and grew into their own distinct things. Anyway, E1B1A definitely in North Africa, definitely in Green Sahara, as we're pointing out here.
And in the Sahel, because, you know, certain trolls like to say E1B1A was like a minority in the Sahel or not even there.
Yeah. Or not even there, not even existent.
Yeah.
And we got too much evidence pointing to the fact that they were there. As we're reading right
now. Were they in the Sahel? They were even in North Africa.
Come on, man. North Africa, they were all over, man. It says, interestingly, we found a clade restricted to northeastern Africa, namely EV001. More specifically, this clade is found at low frequencies, 1 to 5%, in the Siwa Bahariya oasis in the Egyptian Sahara, where it arrived between 10.53 and 3.81 thousand years ago. This can be interpreted as the footprint of a wider and more ancient distribution across the Sahara, which was erased and segregated in the small Saharan oasis after the desertification of the region. That's what I was trying to tell y'all. The people were traveling through oases after it dried up. And look at how when these people arrived to Egypt, this was between 10 to 3,000 years ago. So when you start talking about Ramesses, maybe this is the lineage that he came from, because it's been there for a while. And when you look at the chart, I showed you guys the snips earlier. What page are we on? 74? Let me go to page 55 real quick. And this is why I said this sister, she did a great work here, and it's highly detailed in this paper. Well, it's not there. Let me see if I can find it. If I don't find it, I'll drop it. But she lists what sample that they belong to. And if I can find it, I'll get it. I don't want to spend too much time here. For the brother in the chat asking for the paper name, this is the paper here. Trans-Saharan Connections and High Resolution Analysis of Human Y Chromosome Diversity by none other than Eugenia D'Atanasio. I'm going to put this in here. There you go, right there. And that PDF is free online. Anybody can get it. I'm reading from the PDF. But she brings up, let me see. There it is. Boom. So you can see what population she's getting these markers from and what country they're associated with. So when you go to E-M2, Northern Africa, Egyptians from Bahariya, Egyptian Berbers from Siwa, the Berbers from Morocco have an E-M2, the Quasi-Sate, I don't know how to say that, Berbers. The Asli Berbers from Morocco have E-M2, the Bahariya Berbers. And then, of course, Burkina Faso, the Mandinka.
But Berbers and Egyptians don't carry E1B1A.
They definitely
That's
do.
Impossible.
They definitely do. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. So let's go back.
Woke.
They're being woke. They're just trying to include people, just to include people. So where were we? All right, so yeah, we stopped here. No, we were here. Yeah, we will hear. It says more specifically, this clay is found at low frequencies, 1 to 5% in the Siwa and the Bahariya Oasis in the Egyptian Sahara, where it arrived between 10.53 and 3.81 thousand years ago. This can be interpreted as the footprint of a wider and more ancient distribution across the Sahara, which was erased and segregated in the small Saharan oasis after the desertification of the region.
Whoa, we got to slow that one down. So the people in Egypt that carry E1B1A, that carry the subclades, their ancestors arrived there between 10,000 and 3,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So that's obviously before any Arab slave trade. So they have basically an ancient presence in Egypt.
Exactly.
Fascinating. But yeah, keep going.
Finally, EV4257, the sister clade in the main E-M2 multiplication, shows a scattered distribution from Lake Chad to the western coast. This clade differentiated between 11.03 and 6.46 thousand years ago during the Green Sahara period. The present-day distribution possibly represents the relic of a more ancient and widespread presence throughout the Central Sahara. The geographic distribution and dating of EZ15941, EL516, and EV5001 seems to suggest an extensive occupation of the Saharan Sahelian region from Lake Megachad and northward during the Green Sahara in a time window from 10 to 4,000 years ago, followed by a massive movement southward and to a lesser extent northward due to the advancing desertification. That's, as we read earlier, in the Oxford Handbook of African Archaeology, West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, was not, there's no evidence of a lot of humans there, a lot of human movement, a lot of human occupation until after the desertification of the Sahara. Then you start seeing groups come in with agriculture and pastoral economies. You start seeing them bring in statehood. You start seeing like the no culture coming in. You start seeing people coming down with different crop cultivations and different animal domesticates and start building cities and stuff of that nature. Go ahead, Yuri.
That's interesting. So basically, this is saying, the part you just read, that many of these E1B1A subclades and people who are today scattered in West Africa, many of them were occupied in the Sahara and the Sahel, in these Sahelian regions of Lake Megachad. And so there was a migration starting from the north in the Green Sahara and then moved south within the window time of less than 10,000 to 4,000 years. And that's very similar to basically what ISOF said, or excuse me, ISOGG said, that E1B1A migrated from the north to the south. And this paper is essentially reconfirming that statement that E1B1A, many of its subclades migrated and started in the north. Then there was massive movement southward when the desert began to occur. So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It just attests to the mobility of Africans. It attests to the demography. And as we brought out earlier, the mega Lake Chad and interconnected rivers that crisscross the entire Sahara made mobility that much more easier. So this is easy, this can be shown and proven with the current distribution of peoples. And again, we don't start seeing these massive movement of people to Sub-Saharan Africa, especially in Western Sub-Saharan Africa, till after this event. Right. So that's embedded in the archaeology. We can do whole shows on the appearance of different archaeology, different blade techniques, iron smelting, as we know of. These different things, crop cultivation, pastoralism, all these things don't get to West Africa, animal domesticates until after this period here. So that is showing massive human movement. So from there, I'm not going to read RV88. I'm not going to read that. That's very interesting stuff. From there, I want to go, let's see, for the sake of the video, for the sake of my sleep, we're going to go, Yeah, we'll read the general overview of the Sahara, and then we'll go to the Fulbe people. All right, so since the peopling of the Green Sahara was a complex event with analogies and differences in different regions, in this section we summarize the key findings of the present thesis, trying to paint a comprehensive picture of the events during the last African humid period. 1. The first occupation of the Green Sahara. On the basis of their topology and their geographic distribution, A3, M13, EM2 seem to have arrived in the Central Sahara from the southern Sahelian region, following the northward spread of the savanna environment. On the contrary, the EM78 and RV88 seem to have followed the opposite route, arriving in the Sahara from northern Africa. These data fit with the two-way occupation of the Green Sahara proposed by Drake et al. 2011. However, the archaeological and paleoanthropological evidence shows great homogeneity in the material culture of the early Holocene Saharan populations. These findings suggest a rapid peopling of the Sahara and extensive contacts between different groups facilitated by the network of lakes and rivers. There it is again, because the lakes and rivers are crisscrossed. People had canoes, they had boats, they were able to traverse these rivers very easily and move places very quickly by utilizing the interconnectedness of these rivers. 2. Expansions within the Green Sahara. We found evidence of the first expansion of the Sahara about 7,000 years ago when we observed a differentiation of the majority of the trans-Saharan sublineages belonging to A3, M13, EM2, and RV88 haplogroups. This finding can be interpreted as a consequence of a climatic event and as a result of socio-economic improvements. During the Green Sahara, a short period of aridity occurred around 8,000 years ago. Interestingly, the diffusion of the lineages occurred after this arid parenthesis. In the same period, the Saharan populations abandoned hunting and gathering and adopted pastoralism, probably as an adaptive strategy against the arid conditions. The exploitation of pastoral resources along with the recovery of the weather conditions could have triggered the simultaneous population expansion testified by the increased number of contemporaneous archaeological sites throughout the Sahara. Moreover, we found evidence of a second strong demographic expansion which occurred about 5.7 thousand years ago involving RV88 V1944 haplogroup. It is difficult to state what event promoted this demographic explosion. One possible cause could have been the arrival of pastoralism as far as Lake Mega Chad, where probably RV1944 arose and started its expansion. However, it is worth noting that at the same time, a general cultural shift was observed in other Saharan, sub-Saharan regions, possibly linked to the progression of desertification and the resulting economic, demographic, and social changes. 3. Regional differences at the end of the Green Sahara. The humid period did not end at the same time throughout the whole Sahara. A consequence of this is that Central and Eastern Sahara show a different haplogroup distribution and different time estimates for the separation between Northern and Sub-Saharan Africa. In particular, the Eastern Sahara experienced a more rapid onset of arid conditions. Consistently, the EM78 subclades distributed in this area show a more ancient and evident differentiation between populations from the regions from the Sahara borders. On the contrary, in Central Sahara, the shift from the Green Sahara to the desert was gradual and was not complete until 5 to 4.5 thousand years ago. Again, showing that date right there, again showing that people were still be in that region till about 4,000 years ago and then move south.
And that's very fascinating because when does the Bantu expansion begin? It
Right.
begins roughly about 5 to 4,000 years ago. The Bantus essentially descend from Green Saharans that were fleeing southward.
Right. And I'm glad you reminded me because I have this, Dublin, I have this on cue. I forgot to go to it. Here it is. Whole genome sequence-based haplotypes reveal single origin of sickle cell allele during the Holocene wet phase. And then if you go down to the E1B1A portion of it, it says the patrilineal data corroborates the age of the sickle mutation. Given a single origin, the sickle mutation most likely arose either in a population containing E1B1A L45 and E1B1A U175. That's actually my forefathers right here we're talking about, or in a population containing their common ancestor. Thus, the time and the origin of the common ancestor of these two haplogroups is a plausible upper bound on the age of the sickle mutation. The common ancestor M4732 arose 10,500 years ago, consistent with the upper credible interval 11,100 years ago that we estimated for the age of the sickle mutation. The Bantu expansion started 5,000 years ago, approximately 5,000. It took 2,000 years to cross from present-day Cameroon to the Great Lakes region. The wide, credible interval 3,400 to 11,100 years of the age of the sickle mutation does not rule out the possibility that the mutation coincided at the onset of the Bantu expansion. However, our results support the hypothesis that the origin of the allele predated the onset of the Bantu expansions. First, the allele could have been at or near its equilibrium frequency when the Bantu expansion occurred approximately 5,000 years ago, according to our estimation that the sickle mutation originated approximately 7,300 years ago, and the balancing selection ensued immediately and reached equilibrium in approximately 2,400 years ago in an environment where malaria pre-existed. Second, the likelihood that the allele is carried by migrating individuals increases with the frequency of that allele in the source population. Our results provide some suggestion as to where the sickle cell mutation have originated. Descendants of the Y chromosome haplogroup E1B1A V38 migrated across the Sahara from east to west, possibly around 19,000 years ago. E1B1A 1M2 most likely did not originate in eastern or northeastern Africa, but where it originated, whether it originated in western or central Africa is unclear. Accordingly, the sickle mutation most likely did not occur in eastern or northeastern Africa. Our results indicate that the origin of the sickle mutation was in the middle of the Holocene wet phase, or Neolithic subpluvial, which lasted from 7,500 to 7,000 BC to 3,500 to 3,000 BC. This time was the most recent of the Green Sahara periods, during which the Sahara experienced wet and rainy conditions. Our results thus support the Green Sahara as a possible place of origin of the sickle cell mutation. An alternative hypothesis is that the sickle allele arose in West Central Africa, possibly in the northwestern portions of the equatorial rainforest. So again, it's saying the same damn thing that we've been reading. It's saying the same exact thing.
Yeah, there are so many papers that talk about E1B1A being the Green Sahara. It's like not even a joke at this point. This is partially why I like to play with the trolls and the person behind the 30 different accounts, because it's like you clearly know they haven't been doing enough research on the topic. But it's fun to kind of push buttons a little bit, get some content out of it in the future. But yeah, it's abundantly clear that E1B1A has a Green Saharan presence, and again, this is only dealing with the genetic aspect. There's a linguistic aspect we can deal with. There's an archaeological aspect we can deal with, biological, anthropological, so many other aspects to really prove that the ancestors of E1B1A populations, or the ancestors of modern day West Africans, were definitely in North Africa. They definitely were in the Green Sahara. But anyways, go ahead, keep reading.
Right. This delay is mirrored by A3M13, E-M2, and RV88 distribution in this area, in which in general shows a more recent and less sharp separation. A completely different scenario has been proposed for the Western littoral, which seems to have not been influenced by the Green Sahara dynamics, a fact deduced on the basis of uninterrupted archaeological sites. Therefore, the coastal region could have allowed some contacts between Western and Northwestern Africa. And this is what I was bringing up earlier about Gambia being right there. Maybe I need to show a West Coast of African map. Let me see. But people don't understand. They're right there. So, y'all see look, that's Senegal, Gambia. They're right here. Yeah, Mauritania, Western Sahara, Morocco. They're all there. So with what we just read, that's why we have to have basic understanding of geography. Makes complete sense. And it also makes sense that people like that have Z5994, they live in Morocco, they live in North Africa. Some of them even live in Spain. Some of them even live in France and Germany, and even in England. This all makes complete sense that they share the same Y chromosome as people in the Senegal and Gambia. It makes complete. They're right here. Boom. They just migrated during the Green Sahara. They were all in these regions anyway. But as it deserted and they get restricted over here, I mean, boom, all I gotta do is walk up here. Boom, boom, and boom, and boom, and boom. This is easy shit.
Yeah, Senegambia is in the Sahel area, so
Right.
it's definitely a vital place to live. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. If you look at the Y tree, you see the same branches that have Moroccan branches got Gambian, Sierra Leone branches and Senegalese branches. You know, I mean, it makes complete sense. Like, I'll show you an example of this, right? So this is on EL485. This is on ytree.com, dytree.com. That was what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the E-M2 branch. EL485, which was mentioned in this paper, right?
Oh, yeah, that's the one that was mentioned. Yeah.
Senegal, Mali, you got one in Libya. Sierra Leone, you got one in South Africa. Gambia, Senegal, Mendika, Gambia, Morocco, Gambia, Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone. Why does that this makes complete sense if you understand geography. Now let's go back here. And just to exemplify this even more, Morocco's here, Western Sahara's here, Mauritania's here, Senegal, Gambia, right there. Boom. This is easy.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting white Americans that taking a test and they're finding out, oh, I have branches. I have this branch. Can someone explain this branch? It's Green Sahara. That's all you got to say.
Same thing with Berbers and Coptic people who take DNA tests. When I look online and they say that, oh, I'm E1B1A, they're all like, how am I E1B1A? Can someone explain this? And everybody in the comments is like, well, you probably descend from a slave. And I think to myself, nah, bro, Green Sahara, bro, you're likely not a slave. And then these Coptic or Berbers with E1B1A will be like 100% North African, like autosomally, or 100% Coptic autosomally, and have almost little to no West African autosomes. And it's like, bro, your people have been in either Morocco or Egypt as an E1B1A marker for the past 10,000 to 3,000 years. Stop listening to the folks saying that you're a slave. You're likely not a slave.
Exactly.
The problem is people assume that E1B1A, EV38 formed on the coasts of Nigeria when it didn't. It formed somewhere towards the east. E1B1A formed in what? Either like southern Egypt, northern Sudan, somewhere along that area. If not, the Horn of Africa, somewhere. They migrated east, went into North Africa and the Green Sahara, and emanated from there once it started to dry up.
Yep.
Very simple stuff. Very, very simple. But you can go back to the reading. I don't want to stop you.
Nah, man. Someone brought up Ouagadougou will be in this region too, man. So
yeah, Ouagadougou, another name for Ghana, I believe. Ancient Ghana, ancient Ouagadougou.
Right. President Ghana named themselves in honor of Ouagadougou.
Yes.
President Ghana is not where Ouagadougou was.
That's true. Ghana. Oh, my bad. Go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off.
Well, you got it. Break it out.
Yeah, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, those three ancient, medieval West African kingdoms, Ghana, Songhai, and Mali, they were all in the Sahel area, located basically in between sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa. And they have trade routes that obviously stretch from North Africa into the Sahel and then into West Africa.
Yeah, I can show.
Like I believe the Mande peoples were the main ones to create the Songhai, Ghana, and Mali empires.
Mm-hmm.
Mande people like the Soninke and I'm trying to think of some of the other names. I know that there's the Soninke and then there's some others. Forgive me, I can't think of the others at the moment, but they're all located in the Sahel. Same thing with the Fulani. They created the Tukulor Empire in Senegambia, Jashub was just talking about Gambia, a few seconds ago, and that's where the Fulani had their big headquarters, was that Senegambia area. But oh yeah, there's a good map. Push the one right there from Art Station. That's the Songhai Empire right there, and it's smack dab in the center of the Sahel. Like I said, it's in between like sub-Saharan Africa and North Africa, the Sahel. And there was a lot of mandate peoples sort of built that. It would have been heavily concentrated by E1B1A markers, because the Mande are typically, for the most part, E1B1A. The Mande, the Mandinka, the Soninke, people like that.
Donald says, why is the admixture event of archaic ghost DNA in West Africa nowhere else? That's a lie. That's misinformation. It is found somewhere else. It's found in Chinese people and it's found in Central Europeans.
Yeah, the out of Africa, the people talking in terms of the out of Africa population, it's believed that the ancestral out of Africa population actually would have admixed with archaic Africans as well. And when they left Africa during the out of Africa event, they would have carried small amounts of archaic African DNA. And like what Jashub said, it would be found in Chinese and European peoples.
Yep. Now, I want to finish this, man. I don't want to be on here all night, bro. I don't want to be on here all night. I got to get up. But where were we at? So I explained this. The coastal region could have allowed some contacts between Western and Northwestern Africa. I mean, that's shown between Moroccan clades and Senegal, Gambia, Sierra Leone clades. It just showed that. Let me go down. I want to go to...
There's another section of E1B1A I don't think you read. It deals with the Fulani. You might have to hard take E1B1A.
That's where I'm going. I'm going there right now. It's right here.
Okay.
Yeah. The Sahel. The Sahelian belt spans from the Atlantic Ocean to the Red Sea, immediately south of the Sahara. This climate and ecology is intermediate between desert, typical of present-day Sahara, and the tropical savanna, typical of southern regions. In this area, several dialects belonging to 3 of the 4 African linguistic families, namely Afro-Asiatic, Nilo-Saharan, and Niger-Congo, are spoken, confirming that the Sahel has been and still is an important crossroad in the African continent. In the present thesis, we found signals of at least 2 events that occurred along the Sahelian belt: the Fulbe movements and extensive contacts between Central and Eastern Africa. Because of the geographic position of the Sahel and considering the distribution and time estimates of the haplogroups involved, it is possible that these events were directly or indirectly caused by climatic changes of the last African humid periods. The Fulbe people. The Fulbe probably descend from ancient nomadic herders, although the majority of them has now abandoned pastoralism, becoming sedentary farmers. The origins are still a matter of debate and have been traced back to different African or non-African peoples, such as West Africans, ancient Ethiopians, Nubians, Persians, Jews, or Arabs. In the 21st century, they were settled in the mountains of the 11th century, the Fuda, the Highland, and Guinea. And in later centuries, they moved eastward along the Niger River and as far as Lake Chad, where their first traces date back to the 15th century. Genetically, they seem to have admixed with local populations during their spread from Western Africa to Central Sahel. In this thesis, we found a haplogroup that is particularly frequent among Fulbe, namely E-M2 Z15941. As described in previous section dedicated to the Green Sahara, the first dispersal of this clade seemed to have occurred in a time window coherent with the last African humid period. However, its current ethnogeographic distribution perfectly traces the Fulbe migration from Western Africa to the Central Sahel. The highest frequencies were reported among the Western populations, in particular the Mandinka from Senegal and Gambia, and among the Fulbe groups from Nigeria and from Cameroon. Its absence in Fulbe from Niger is probably due to the low sample size, since we have only 7 subjects belonging to this ethnic group. In other populations, EZ15941 was absent, with the exception of a few Berbers. In conclusion, EZ15941 941 followed a dual evolution. It firstly dispersed across the Green Sahara thanks to the improved climatic conditions, as testified by its probable ancient presence in the Egyptian Siwa oasis. I'm going to read that again. In conclusion, EZ15941 followed a dual evolution. It firstly dispersed across the Green Sahara thanks to the improved climatic conditions, as testified by its probable ancient presence in the Egyptian Siwa oasis.
Shout out to Assassin's Creed Origins, because the main protagonist, Bayek, is actually an Egyptian from Siwa. So
Siwa, yeah.
in my mind, my canon is that he's E1B1A.
Yeah, EZ1594.
Yeah, that's my head canon.
It says here, on the other hand, its present-day diffusion in this alien belt was heavily due to recent movements of Fulbe people. The analysis of the markers in the branches of downstream of EZ15941, in particular, the polymorphism shared with the Gambian population of the Thousand Genomes Project, can shed light on the time and trajectories of the first dispersal of this haplogroup. Furthermore, important information can emerge regarding the role of the Fulbe in the process and possibly about the ancient history of this population. All right, so that's a bombshell. We're going to move on from here. And there's a lot of great information about the clades. I would like to cover that, but I want to go straight to, all right, Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm going to read all of this. Let's go EV32. The Bantu expansion. Let's see. Yeah, I want to read this. About 5,000 years ago, the Bantu branch of the Niger-Congo linguistic family originated in Central Africa, in the southern regions of Nigeria and Cameroon. Thanks to the adoption of agriculture and later of iron technologies, these people spread from their homeland towards eastern and southern Africa, leading to the diffusion of agricultural skills in the Bantu language throughout sub-Saharan Africa. Along with cultural and technological features, this demic diffusion led to the spread of the Bantu genetic pool. The E-M2 and BM150Y haplogroups are usually linked to the Bantu expansions, considering their geographic distribution and their high frequencies among Niger-Congo speaking groups. The Bantu expansion is not the main focus of the present thesis, although the analysis of EM2 haplogroup made it possible for us to study EM2 U209 and EM2 N191. These subclades harbor a large number of EM2 chromosomes and both include a frequent lineage, U290 and EU174 respectively, which has been specifically linked to the Bantu expansion. From the genotype and analysis, we obtain a detailed distribution information for the EU209, EM191, and the subclade EU174. EU209 and EU174 show a strong Central African component, consistently with their link with the Bantu demic diffusion. They are also found in Central, Southern, and Eastern Africa among populations influenced by the expansion. Interestingly, within the EM191, we found another subclade, namely E8019527, which seems to be involved in the Bantu expansion as well as its sister clade EU174. E8019527 is far less frequent than EU174, and it has a scattered distribution from the Gulf of Guinea to Morocco. There you go again, North African E1B1A variants. However, both lineages show their highest frequency among Niger-Congo populations, and their time estimates are coherent with the Bantu expansion. And just as we brought up earlier, again, the coastal region right there in Morocco and Western Sahara, they're right there. They're neighboring countries. Why wouldn't they be able to travel back and forth? We did not genotype the U290 in all the samples, so we were not able to dissect the U209 variability in all the populations here analyzed. However, considering only the results of the NGS, we dated the split of U290 from the other EU209 ancestral chromosomes between 6,000 and 4,90,000 years ago. The diversification of EU290 occurred after this date, consistently with a spread linked to the Bantu diffusion. Interestingly, the upper limit of EU209 radiation falls within the Green Sahara period, which may have triggered the first dispersal of this clade. The genotyping of further. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's exactly what I was saying earlier, that it seems like the Bantu expansion is linked to the Green Sahara. So basically, after the Sahara, the ancestors of the Bantu, I guess I'll say Proto-Bantu, they were in the Sahara, and then as it began to dry, they started migrating southward. And that's literally what, right there, that's literally what seems to be going on, what it's saying, with that EU290, when the radiation event occurred.
My ancestors, Bontoids.
Right. And yeah, keep going.
The genotyping of further markers within EU209 could possibly distinguish between the sub-Saharan Bantu component and a more ancient Northern African Sahelian one.
Yep, there you go. Bantu expansion is linked to the Northern African Saharan migration.
Yep. And there you go. There you have it.
Which makes sense.
So we learned that there are E1B1A clades that had ancient presence in Egypt, ancient presence in Morocco, ancient presence in the Green Sahara in general. They utilize the mega lake Chad and the interconnected rivers to travel quickly throughout the Sahara. There are certain clades that are specific to those regions mentioned before. These people were highly traveled. They went up and down, east and west, and after the drying of the desert, they migrated south. A mass migration of people migrated south, and this will also explain, the flatworms that the Yoruba have that seem to come from Egypt, showing you that these people are widely distributed in Africa in ancient times, and only get to their present day distributions due to the drying of the desert of the Sahara. What you got, Avery?
No, I think we covered it and we made our point extremely clear. E1B1A, it was in Northern Africa, it was in the Green Sahara, and those males migrated north to south. They migrated from the Sahara, from the Green Sahara, into West and Central Africa. The Bantu expansion seems to be connected to that ancient Northern African Sahelian population. And I think it's pretty clear to basically say that E1B1A is a Green Saharan lineage, and those males migrated south, and that mixed with the local population. They brought in iron, they brought in agriculture and pastoralism, agro-pastoralism. And the people that they encountered when they went to sub-Saharan Africa were foragers and hunter-gatherers. So, I think it's pretty clear that E1B1A was not always restricted or stuck in West and Central Africa. If anything, E1B1A migrated into West and Central Africa. It was never stuck in West and Central Africa.
Right. Its origin point, V38. We go all the way to V38. V38 was migrated from East Africa into West Africa. And then from there, during the African humid period, it goes into the Sahara because it's lush, full of animals, and it's a nice place to be. You're able to live along the rivers and whatnot. And then it has a bunch of children that spread in all directions.
Right. Heck, there's some E1B1A markers that never entered West and Central Africa, that never entered Sub-Saharan Africa. Some E1B1A is North African specific, and whether it's North Africa like Morocco or among the Berbers, or whether it's North Africa and Egyptian, which is interesting to kind of see that there's E1B1A markers that are specific to the North and never went south.
Yep. And speaking of East African E1B1A, we both know M329.
Motor Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Omatic the Afro-Asiatic speaking E1B1A Omotic population in East Africa.
Right. So E1B1A is all over. EM2 having a sister clade going into North Africa. Again, EM80 possibly having its origin in what is now considered Algeria, and a lot of the clades coming out of that. Some of those descendant clades don't even go down south, like you brought up. They keep going north or go northeast or go somewhere else. You know, like EM58 made its way all the way to the Near East, and several other clades as we read today. The Egyptian clades, the Moroccan clades, the Algerian, the Libyan specific clades, some European specific clades. E1B1A, as the paper said in several positions, is widely dispersed in ancient times. And we're seeing the relic of that in the modern population density.
Facts. And you know, this explains why we see, because, you know, that paper that deals with the Ibero-Maurusians, this explains why we see Yoruba with, you know, a West African, all the way near the coast Nigerian population. It makes sense why we see the Yoruba carrying Neolithic North African autosomes, the Ibero-Maurusian autosomes. They have it about 13% more or less, and the Green Sahara explains that, you know, why the Yoruba and other West Africans that are Yoruba related would carry Ibero-Maurusian DNA.
Mm-hmm. It explains a lot. It explains the Ibero-Maurusians having 30% SSA DNA. It explains everything, man. Like, because at the end of the day, all that's showing is that these people are interconnected, and they were closer. They were closer in ancient times than they are today. Being separated by the desert.
Right. And the funny thing is, we only to date spoke about E1B1A, but the same is true even with the MT DNA. There's a lot of evidence of mitochondrial L lineages, whether it's L1B1A or L21A or L3, etc. A lot of sub-Saharan African females were traveling in the Green Sahara 10,000, years ago. So not just the men, it's the women too.
EM329, right?
But tonight's video is mainly about the Y chromosome, though.
Right. Look at that. EV38, E1B1A, and then EM329. East African specific.
It looks like there's 22 Saudi Arabia, 3 Kuwait, and 1 Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of Saudi people with that.
Yep, Motor Man. It was there in Ethiopia, 4,500 years ago.
Yep.
Then we go to Globe Trekker.
Doesn't it put its brother clade, or is it ancestor? I can't remember. Where is it? Because it's in Arabia.
Yeah.
Well, you have to look at the timeline, actually, so I can make sure I'm looking at this. So, damn. And let me see. Oh, so it splits in two directions, about 15,000 BCE, with one going south into Arabia and one going north through Sinai and the Levant into Arabia. Okay.
In ancient times, yeah.
So north and south migration route. And this is BC era. Yeah, this is not even like, you can't even say this is a result of the slave trade. This is the BC era.
Yeah, way before that. Just like Atanasio made emphasis on the paper over and over again. These splits happened 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Like, this is not common era events going on. This had nothing to do with the Romans, had nothing to do with the Islamic expansion, had nothing to do with the transatlantic slave trade. None of that. This is too old to be, have any of those things be in the cards, So we can show again V5001. Show you another example.
And this is another E1B1A branch.
Yep. And we do the same.
To be specific, this is not the Motorman one. This is the other E1B1A, E-M2, should I say?
Yeah. This is a downstream of E-M2. We just showed a downstream V38 that split off and made his own early distinct branch in Eastern Africa.
Mm. And so it goes into the north.
So look, going into Algeria, this is Northern Africa, Mali and
9,000 BCE.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes to North Africa.
EM180.
My bad, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you got it. I'm just pausing it. You can narrate it.
In Algeria, which is North Africa proper, EM180, which both EU175 and EU174 descend from EM180.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is 7,000 BCE. So it's in Niger. And I mentioned this last night, but just in case people are new and are watching, you see all those mountains right there in that area near Algeria, Libya, and Niger. There was a lot of rock art found in that particular area where you see E1B1A and all those mountains. And this is just further evidence that there was human populations in the Green Sahara, in the Central Sahara. And a lot of that rock art likely was made by, various lineages, but E1B1A would be one of those lineages that would have been making that rock art in the Central Sahara, because it's right there where that art is found, those E1B1A clades, 6,000 BCE, which is when the Sahara was green.
Yeah, the Iron Mountains, that's what they're called.
Yeah, those mountain ranges, yeah, because humans were living there.
And it also shows migration and movement, because even animals, even the fauna. Remember, that book when the Sahara's green, it talks about the monkeys that were really West African monkeys, and after the desert dried up, they went and hid in the mountains, because the mountains will be able to sustain and maintain more water and stuff of that nature. And those are West African monkeys. So monkeys can travel, but humans can't. Get the hell out of here. Everyone, animals, humans, we migrate, we move.
Mm-hmm.
So,
got legs.
Right. So
north.
As you can see, this clay did not go south, but instead it went north.
And this is E1B1A E-M2 clade.
Mm-hmm.
And this is at 3,000 BCE. So this is before any type of Arab slave trade. And it's an E1B1A clade going into, it looks like it's heading towards the direction of Egypt.
Right. And as we read on the paper, many of these, several of these Egyptian peoples, like the people of Siwa and the Berbers of this region, have these E1B1A clades.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. So it looks like it's headed to, I think that would be Upper Egypt in ancient times. They arrived there at about like 1000 BCE. And it kind of looks like it kind of just stays there.
Yep.
Yeah, we're in the Common Era. So yeah, it pretty much, that E1B1A pretty much just stays in Egypt. Okay.
Yeah. It's restricted to that region.
But I thought E1B1A was all just restricted to Nigeria.
Yeah, I mean, people think like that. So this is EM58.
Okay, EM58. Okay. And this looks like it's Northwest Arabia. It also looks like, all right, so some of its descendants emanate into other parts of Arabia, like Yemen, and towards the east of Arabia. And some also back migrate from Arabia into Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then migrate southwards. Okay. what's the timeline of this? When did it actually enter into the Middle East?
When we read the paper, it showed that EM58 has Near Eastern clades.
And again, we're looking at a E-M2 E1B1A. We're not looking at the Motorman E1B1A. This is the E-M2 E1B1A specifically. So it migrates north as well into northern Niger and southern Algeria, migrates through Libya, through Egypt at about 2000 BCE, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So this is prior to any type of Arab slave trade. It arrives there. Well, actually, no, that looks like, was it 4000 BC?
Yeah, in Libya, 4500, and then it crosses over.
Yeah, 3000 BCE. My bad. I said 2000. It's 3000 BC. So that's like over 3000 years ago. It was in the Levant. It was in Israel. And then where does it go from there? It goes south into Northwest Arabia, and its descendants migrate from Northwest Arabia in the BC era. They back migrate in 100 BCE into Africa. And they pretty much spread from there. Okay.
Yep.
All across the Arabian Peninsula and into North Africa, into sub-Saharan Africa.
All right, let's do 4240. There's another.
This is another E-M2, another E1B1A. Again, not Motorman, a different E1B1A, the other one. EM2 specific. And it goes into Morocco. Okay. Shout out to the Moroccans. So let's see. And as we can see, make its way east, west, and north into Mali, then into the central Sahara. And it's migrating east about 3000 BCE, 4000 BCE. It's heading east. So this is also an ancient migration from the Green Sahara into Morocco. So the E1B1A men who are Moroccan and carry this clade, you can't say that they got it from from an Arab slave trade. It's 4000 BCE. It's migrating into Mauritania and Morocco. This is a pretty ancient clade. 1000 BCE, 100 BCE, 400 BCE. Common era. Yeah, this is ancient.
Yep.
Prior to any Arab slave trade.
I mean, again, just to add emphasis, like we read earlier, look where this stuff is. Look where the country's at: Senegal, Gambia, Mauritania, Western Sahara,
Yeah,
Morocco, and even after the desertification, as Anastasio pointed out, like all of this, you can travel via the coast. And West Africans are very good at navigating the Atlantic along the coast as well. They were very well. They were so good at it that that's how the slave trade happened. That was one of the modes of transportation. They would load slaves onto the canoes and meet the slave ships, and as they docked at the Atlantic Sea, and load them up with slaves.
yep.
Even in stormy conditions, whatever, because they were so used to traveling along this coast.
Yep. But it looks like with this particular dude, he would have stopped at different oases to get to where he ended up.
Yes, yep. This would have been an oasis community, yep. After the desertification.
Yeah.
So I think that's good enough, man.
Yeah, y'all can check out yesterday's video if you want to look at more E1B1A clades that were scattered throughout the Mediterranean, whether it's North Africa. Some even made it into Europe. Yes, Europe. Check out yesterday's video. And also E1B1A made it into Arabia. So If you want to look up more of those E1B1A clades like we did just now, just look at yesterday's video, and there's a ton of them that made it to different locations after the Green Sahara.
Yep. I'll do one more. Let's see this one. This is your favorite one. Hold on. Yeah, as you can see. It's Algeria.
Gambia, Mauritania, and Morocco, Niger.
Ivry's favorite E1B1A clade.
Let's see. Yeah, this is a good tool. I'm still shocked that most DNA companies don't have something like this, but I guess you need a lot of people to take DNA tests to have something like this. All right, so there's E180 in Algeria, migrates west, emanates from Mali in 4000 BCE. So the Sahara was kind of it was drying at this time. It was dry slash.
It was starting to dry. It was starting to dry. Yeah.
Yeah. So people leave from Mali.
3000 BC.
Yes, it's definitely dry at this point. So people are going into the Sahel in Senegambia. Yeah, I might have to go back a little bit. They start migrating north, I think, at 1000 BCE. Yeah, into Mauritania. Well, actually, no, they migrate north in 1500 BCE. In Mauritania. And they go into Morocco. They go into Algeria. Shout out to the Algerians. In 800 BCE. So this is still before any Arab slave trade. Yeah, that's what's up. Still in the BC era. Yeah, so this E1B1A seems to basically be Sahelian slash Saharan and also European, apparently. It goes into Spain. Yeah, it goes into Spain. So it's a Sahelian, Saharan, North African, European E1B1A lineage.
Yep. All right, I'll let that be the last one.
And that's why that's an interesting clay, because it's all three.
I got a little bit, y'all. I wanted to keep this under 2 hours. We're over it, but it is what it is. I hope you guys learned about the Green Saharan legacy of E1B1A, its distribution. It's not just restricted to sub-Saharan Africa. Even today, that's not true. Again, we showed you there are people in Egypt, North Africa, 2 to 10%, and even outside and beyond. And of course, we're here in America because of transatlantic slave trade. So, duh. So, go ahead, Avery. What?
I was just laughing what you said.
No, I mean, like, come on, man. People are idiots. Anyway, hope you guys learned something, got something from it. Don't take anything from the video. Take this from the video. Africans are highly mobile. And we out.
Peace.
So my music's not working. Let me do this. Let me remove that. And let me remove studio. And do it this way.
We witnessed one of the most delightful in our time. So let the bass go. Now it's gotta go a little bit lower than that, Dre. Drop it. Now it's gotta go even more than that. You know why? Why? You've been denied, although you tried. So I've been intervened to make you flow like a tide. No disappointment, cause my beetle soothes like an ointment. Suckers with static approaching get smoked like a joint. Flint ignites the flame, I mean I burn like a lighter. But with a hip-hop groove, cause I'm a writer. The hero are great, take a stand, then we'll see. in chronological order, starting with me. A rap introduction, a sucker's destruction, yeah. A rolling voice I started conducting. The lyrics were the maximum, I stated for facts in them. Just never tried to break, no one to black some. Murder in the first degree occurs only when dealing with the D-O to the C. I'm like a whirlwind pyramid, and I'm letting you know I get ill when I hear the bass go. Yeah, that's the sound, and you know it's down, but you know why?
Why's that?
Cause I've been around, and you've heard the sound of the doc and the new style that I found. It's quite unorthodox, but still bassing enough to make you dance. So I picked up the pace and let it ride like a cyclist. And see it showing the end that I'm the mightiest, and that I'm lyrically inclined to make you wanna step to my time. The beat and the cut to this rhyme. Do a show, and I'm good to like a Geo. Never getting skeezed, I mean it's like a NO. Happiness to me is like a positive cash flow, so I let your ear cold hear when the bass goes.
Kick it over here, kick it over here.
Now I think it's about time.
Feel the beat.
Drop that what? Bass. I bet. I don't wanna. Cause if I do, you might lose it. I made this record for you to jam, so use it. Kill the treble, pump the bass, and then send the suckers on the block into a tailspin. Roll by, booming like a nuke bomb. I know the pressure on your ears, but stay calm. After you pass, though, you better turn it down some, or else you're gonna put a dent into your eardrum. Success relies on the individual. I feel successful when receiving a residual. But as for you, you all should know when I say let's get hype, I'm letting the bass go. Now that's the way it should be done. I know that's on the one, and that is fun. To see a sucker standing weary, and girlies on the tip standing near me. The bass was the topic, so I dropped it, added some dope lyrics, and then I locked it. On track 24 in a machine, to make you move on the hip-hop scene. Queued up Dre, and I knew that he would know. Thought on the one, I would let the bass go. Because a dope jam is what I gotta make. I make it rattle cause you love it when it vibrates. The D, the O, into the C must cause pleasure when showing yo my ability to inject on a set mass enjoyment. This is to ensure definite employment. When I hit town, yo, you'll know. Crowds will roar, and you hear the bass go. Yeah, yeah, let the bass go. This is most definitely down with my homeboy DJ Speed. Is that on track?